Let's try to draft my first bodysuit. So happy to be back. Today what I'm going to be doing is using this very bright scrap fabric I have. It is a jersey knit type material, almost looks like a bathing suit material in a way. I have quite a bit of it, but it's all cut up in different pieces and different types. I'm going to try to make a bodysuit with it as it's very stretchy all the way around. And I think to do that, I'm going to use this tank top that I have that is stretchy as well. And then I've measured my torso for how long it is, and then I have a bathing suit bottom so that I can kind of get that one piece shape. And that is going to be the basis for my bodysuit. One element I will be changing about this though is obviously for my swimsuit bottom, it is one piece, but for the bodysuit, what I want to try to do is add snaps at the bottom, so that way it's easy to take on and off my dress form. I'm hoping that this bodysuit, it's more going to be a prototype, like proof of concept type thing to see how I would go about making them. But what I really want to do is make it easy to take on and off for photos and videos. So I'm going to be adjusting the bottom a little bit. So the sides will be staying the same, but the bottom part is going to actually be, it'll be like there will be the front, the back, and then there's going to be a third piece so that I can add those snaps. So the first step was I laid out my tank top as well as the bathing suit bottom, and then I have it measured around onto my fabric. So I'm going to trace that out and then cut it. Now for the bottoms, as I said, I'm making that kind of third piece to connect it to. So I'm just going to trace out a general shape from this swimsuit bottom onto two pieces of fabric so that I'll be able to make that connector piece. So again, just tracing it out and then cutting it. So here are all my pieces. So I have a front, a back, and then the piece to connect the two. This is a voiceover, so I will tell you now that I did make a couple mistakes, forgetting that the front and back of a human are different. They are not the same. So as we go along, you'll see that I am going to be changing the shape of this up slightly. One thing I will note though is I did not have enough fabric for another complete piece. So I did cut out two separate pieces and sewed them together and then made that front, so I'd have the front panel and then the back panel. My original idea was I was going to give it straps. I ended up not doing that. But what I did do for this is I used a zigzag stitch for everything so that it would have that stretch, since the main portion of this bodysuit is something that can stretch on and will work well. So here's where things start to get a little trickier, as I decided I was going to drape it on my dress form first to see how it would fit. And this is where I learned that my front panel was not correct and it did not fit. So I ended up, the panel that I had to sew two different pieces, I had it at the top, so kind of like a tube top style, and then I realized that if I did that, it was actually going to fit okay, but the back was still too long. So what I'm going to end up doing at this point, I was thinking I was still adding some sort of straps to the front, but it's not going to work, and this is going to end up being a strapless bodysuit, and it will work pretty well. So the next step for this is I'm actually going to pin together the sides for both the front and the back so that I can have one piece. And so this is what it looks like when it's all pinned up. So I'm just going to take a straight seam all the way down. I'm going to be using a zigzag stitch so that it still has that stretch and give, since it'll need to go over the body and be form-fitting. So here is my bodysuit so far. The sides have now all been sewn up and it's hugging the body very nicely, which is what I was hoping for. One thing I will note on here is you can see there's some lines underneath of it. These are coming from my dress form and it's not something from the fabric. So that's just the fitting material of the dress form itself. Now what I need to go through though and do is trim up all the extra fabric that was on the top, as well as get rid of some of the extra like little strings that are attached on the sides to clean it up. In addition, with it fitting better on the sides, I started to notice that I was really going to have to fix the lower portion of the bodysuit so that it would actually correctly fit a human. So with this, I'm going to be cutting off some of that extra fabric that's on the front of the dress form so that it can fit better. In addition, for the back, this is where I decided that it was just going to be a lot easier to make it strapless, as the fabric already just kind of lays like that itself and it is tight enough to support itself. So the first step was I trimmed up some of that front fabric so that it would fit better. And then once I did that, I took the bodysuit off and put it back on and trimmed up the extra fabric and string. Now with the front cut better and more aligned with what the dress form looks like, I decided to go ahead and take a rolled hem for both of the legs so that there would be no raw edges and you wouldn't be able to see it. For this, it was very easy. I just did both sides and I folded it up, and I'll take a zigzag stitch so it still has stretch. So I want to stop here for a second. This has been so frustrating and annoying because I started using the zigzag stitch and then my machine kept getting jammed, and I don't know if it is a issue of using the wrong foot. I have in the correct needle, like one for knits, but I've seen that there's been some videos of people use a different foot for a zigzag stitch, so that may be on me. But I ended up, since this is just kind of a proof of concept, it's just going to be used for photos, just giving in and doing a straight stitch because that appears to be working. I'm not thrilled by the idea just because, obviously that's not the stitch you're supposed to use, but I'm going to be completely transparent in the making of this and just say that I had to give up essentially for that and go with a straight stitch. So now it's time to sew up one of the final pieces, and that was the piece that will connect the front and the back of the bodysuit to add the snaps to it. So I'm just going to sew around all 4 sides and leave a 2-inch gap, and then that will be done using a straight stitch, especially since I've been having so many issues with the zigzag stitch. And then I will turn it right side out and we will move on. So with that piece complete, I was able to really start to move on to the final steps for the bodysuit. So for the front, I did pin up the little flap that was going to be there so that it would remove some of that raw edge. The cat was obviously assisting, so I'm going to take a seam there. And then in addition, on the back, I am going to attach that little piece that we created to the back so that it would be on to the bodysuit. So with that done, the absolute last step I had to do was to add some snaps to the bottom of the bodysuit. So I use these really great plastic snaps that I have. I will link them below in case you're interested. I love how they turn out, and there's so many colors in the kit that it worked really well for this. And here is the completed bodysuit. This was so much work. There were so many mistakes that came up. There's even small parts of it now that when I look at it, I'm not super thrilled, but overall for a proof of concept and for what I was hoping for, it turned out great. My big lessons and takeaways from this for this proof of concept was to make sure you have the correct foot for your sewing machine, make sure you're using the right needle, make sure you are using the correct stitch, and make sure that you have the tension set correctly. I'm excited though for this. I'm going to be using it in some upcoming videos and pictures, so be sure to be on the lookout for those. If you like this video and you want to see more, be sure to like and subscribe.